Okay, hello everyone. Welcome to Real Time November with Zero Density. For this entire month, we will be discussing virtual studios, augmented reality, and broadcast graphics with bite-sized tutorials, new release previews, and case study webinars like this one. My name is Birim. I'm communication and digital marketing team lead at Zero Density and also a part-time moderator, I guess. Before we start our webinar, let me give a quick overview about Zero Density. Well, Zero Density is a world leader in virtual studio and real-time graphics technologies for the broadcast, live events, and esports industries. Zero Density released its Unreal Engine native real-time broadcast compositing system in 2016, and we are on air ever since. From Olympics to Louis Vuitton virtual fashion shows, Realty Engine and its keying technology, Realty Care, has been used by some of the biggest companies in the world. We have installations at 45 countries over 6 continents, including Nigeria, United Arab Emirates, Canada, well, basically all over the world. And we are going live more than 1 million hours, and it's counting. And well, since it's in 45 countries, I wanted to show you some selected customers. Well, clients include the Weather Channel, RTL, Fox Sports, Warner Media. And well, this is basically Zero Density in a nutshell, but you probably already know that. So let's move on with our webinar today. My guest is Thibaut Barra from Dreamwall, and with Thibaut, we will talk about real-time virtual graphics in sports broadcasts from studio to stadium. And I want to mention that if you have any questions, and don't hesitate, if you have any, drop them in the Q&A box and we don't miss it in the chat box. So let's start, Thibaut. Welcome.
Yeah. Good afternoon, Birim, and everybody.
Yes, so let's start with a small introduction of Dreamwall and yourself and how you built the first virtual studio in Belgium.
Yeah, so in 2005, when I was working for RTBF, we started to build the first virtual studio in Belgium. So it means now that when I left RTBF in order to create Dreamwall, which is, by the way, also a subsidiary of RTBF, it means that we have now more than 16 years of experience in the uses and the best uses of virtual studio technology. And since now 5 years, when I met Zero Density managers at NAB, we started to work together because you know that previously the render engine came and were developed by the TV graphic industry. And so at that time, it means that, okay, it was working, but it was not really, we were not able to afford the level of realism that the customers wanted. So when we met Zero Density 5 years ago, it was the first solution to come on the market for Dreamwall. So for companies like Dreamwall, that allows us to go to the higher level of quality when you compare to old, of course, TV graphics render engine. So it was the beginning of the history. And so here in Belgium, we have 2 virtual studios, one of 400 square meters with 7 camera and 7 render engine of reality from Zero Density. And we have also a small studio in which we are producing weather shows, weather forecast shows, which is quite a small one, which is more or less 40 square meters with 2 cameras, in which we are producing more than 25 shows a day for various customers all around the world. So this is a little bit to know about Dreamwall. And in Dreamwall, as we are also design company, we are producing channel branding, of course, virtual sets, augmented reality, but also animation studio. So we have a complete range of services that we can propose to the customers. And so since now 16 years, we know about the best uses of Virtual Studio and also how to create concept design, integration, production. But of course, all the customers may only want perhaps sometimes operations or integration. And so as we are experts for the complete chain of the complete workflow, we can, of course, provide to customers only the services that they want. So this is more or less about Dreamwall.
Yes, thank you. Today, of course, we will look deep into the sports broadcast area, but we will take sports broadcast in 3 angles. One is the studio broadcast that you open RTBF and there's Europa League. And the second one will be from the field, which will be in the forms of teleportation or from the field AR. And thirdly, we will look into a new part of sports broadcast, which is from the stadiums in terms of advertising and fan experience using augmented reality. But let's start with the studio one.
Exactly. So as we are also production house, we can propose all the services of virtual studio technology, either in our facilities, of course, but also in facilities of customers. If I take here 3 examples that we are going to see for TF1, by example, we produced virtual sets, augmented reality, and so we integrate the 3D scenes inside the TF1 environment. So this is one case where we train people from TF1 in order to operate weekly the telefoot show. So we are going to see a little bit of this, or for FIFA World Cup or Euro 2020, that kind of thing. So this is something that we can bring inside our customers with a zero density solution. For Star Sports in India, since 3 years, we are producing design or concept and integration and production of in order to meet the needs of Star TV and for RTBF as well. But we can go everywhere in the world in order to produce, let's say, the result, the best result on air and live experience, of course. Here you can see some examples of what we delivered in sports for virtual sets. Here it's for France, it was for RMC Sport, and here for TF1, we made it in 2018 for World Cup with augmented reality. What is interesting in this project was an hybrid solution, because this is a real art set, and with virtual set extension and through also an LED wall. We use also the studio to produce some storytelling. Here, what TF1 would like to get on air was, as they were not able to go with a real camera inside the cloakroom, inside the bus, inside the rooms of the players, the idea was to rebuild all these environments. Here it was for France TV, let's say a cycling, for a cycling presentation that we did, or here for Star TV. So in Mumbai, what is interesting is that we modelized old Mumbai city on a 15-kilometer square. And so we can go, we can do flyover with virtual camera, of course, or other examples, more simple. for here some customers in Northern Europe. And here it's BTV. This is a weekly show that is produced inside our facility, inside our studio. And this is probably, we've got some award for this concept of virtual design. And we take care of lights and everything, of course. And here is about RTBF Euro 2020 with different parts. Here a new development. This is what we call for technical lineups and for animation of the players before the game or at halftime and post game, of course. So you have here a quick surround of all the Dreamwall may bring to the different customers in order to meet the needs of everyone, of course. Yes.
Well, I want to ask, what is important for TV channels when opting for virtual studios and AR during their sport broadcasts? What do they ask of you?
Of course, usually the request of TV channels regarding the studio is to get more creative and more innovative ways of producing shows, of course. And probably that virtual technology may help to build sets that could not be built using standard sets. So, and when you are talking about bringing a stadium inside the studio, of course, you cannot do it in a regular way. And so that's probably one of the main reasons for which the TV broadcasters are requesting to use more and more virtual studio instead of standard one. But here it was very interesting, as I told you, because it was hybrid. First, a hybrid project 3 years ago with a real set with desk, chairs, and audience inside the studio, but also a LED wall and, of course, virtual set extension that were managed by two different render engines. So in this case, we were using 3 render engines in order to fill the different places and locations in the studio, because it was hybrid, of course, with LED wall for render engine, and also virtual extension, and inside this little green box in order to do storytelling. So it's really great experience with TF1, and that's the reason why we are still producing with TF1 Telefoot, which is a weekly show. And here for Mumbai, yes, as I told you, the idea was to fly over Mumbai and to get buildings in different ambient lights, days, night, or whatever they need, and to put augmented reality on the buildings of Mumbai, and going from the TV station building to the stadium, to the cricket stadium. We built different sets for Star TV, for football, for cricket, IPL, and also for a different World Cup of cricket. You know that this is a great game, very popular in India. So we are proud to be part of that experience. And here, as I told you, we will see later these players which are controlled by an interface.
Can we pause, Ali?
The presenter, sorry?
Can we pause on the tablet one? Yeah.
Yeah, yes. So here, so the presenter through a web application is able to recall the different position and different animation of the game. It's not to show tactical lineup, because we don't need this for tactical lineup, but it's used in order to create and to show, to try to explain to the audience how the different players will be moving together in order to show um, um, tactical movements, tactical animation of the game. Yeah. So it was the request of RTBF for us to develop this. And so now we are able, we will see it later, to use it on the real pitch. So yeah, before the game or at halftime, commentators and presenters are able to show the different animation of the game using the 3D players and placing them where they want. Of course, later we should be able to link the different players, the 3D players, of course, to the real players.
Well, sports broadcast is a little bit different than other use cases, maybe because it's very dynamic. There's a lot of animation, there's a lot of storytelling, and probably TV channels want to visualize everything for the audience and want it to look good. So in this scenario, what is the added value of Dreamwall with Zero Density? What would you say?
Yes, I would say that in 2018 for World Cup for TF1, the architecture of reality software from Zero Density was the only one, the only one software that we could use in order to provide this real-time compositing environment. Yes, so because of the complexity of the thing. So it's a 3D stadium. This is Sochi. You can see also the moon. So at that time, we were managing and controlling the ambient light different depending of the hour and the clock hours. And so here what you see is the real set, of course, with people which are sitting near the desk. Just behind the presenter, you have a LED wall, and you see an arch. This arch is real. And so it was difficult because as it was a real arch, the masking in order to generate the virtual extension. So what I'm calling the virtual extension is on top of the arch, is what you see on top of the arch. So if you are running the video, you will see that the virtual extension is following, of course, what is rendered inside the LED wall, okay, and also in the third zone, which is the green zone to the right of the studio. And you were talking about storytelling, so it was great here to each day we produce a small sequence where, in this case, by example, the presenter came out from the virtual bus of the French team. And so the storytelling was to tell what is happening inside the bus while they are traveling from the hotel to the stadium or that kind of thing. And so TF1 decided to use virtual technology in order for us to produce that kind of thing. Here it was just to explain that the players are always sitting at the same position. All the shirts are and the jerseys are all always at the same place. They've got their shoes which are prepared. They've got the jerseys. They've got all the things. And so here also the presenter, Denis Brognard, was also explaining a little bit about the tactical. So just to remind with some keywords the tactical features and most important points. So TF1 uses the green box in order to tell stories, and the virtual set extension in order to get more and more, let's say, in order to merge the real set inside the stadium. So it was really, really nice project. Already 3 years ago, but still now some customers are always requesting that kind of hybrid solution, because with hybrid solution, presenters, guests, everybody may feel more comfortable than only using a green screen. You have also the LED wall that allows people inside the studio to see something. So it's a second advantage. And the third advantage of the green box inside, where you can do everything you want. So I think that's probably what TF1 did 3 years ago is now the trend of what all the customers are requesting from DreamWorld, but also from other companies, of course.
Well, they applied every trick in the book in that production, and in that year, France went to be the champion. So they had enough time to cover everything, because it was the ultimate storytelling level. They took the audience to everyday locations of the players, from the cafeteria to locker room to physio room to the bus, and with a little practice, they really put on a show. And it's not just graphics here, it's also another level. I think it was the perfect interaction between physical and virtual, and they took advantage of it.
Yes, as you know, at DreamWorld, we don't want to use technology only for technology, but for the added value. And so we are always thinking about the content, and it's probably one of the reasons why we worked so closely with TF1 during World Cup, but also with other customers in order to tell stories. And we produced after this some storytelling regarding the centenary of the First World War. Of course, it's not sport, so we are not going to show it. But yeah, it was just to show the life of the soldiers, during World War I, and how they feel and what was the conditions of living during that war. So yeah.
Well, another TV channels really need, I think, is reliability with the solution they use. Because these, for example, I know that RTBF was on air for more than 6 hours every time when they had Europa League.
Yes, exactly. So we are producing Europa League shows for RTBF here inside our studio. And of course, we are on air at 6 p.m. till 12 or 1 a.m. So during more than 6-7 years, the systems are running on 7 camera. We didn't, since now 5 or 6 years, we didn't get one blue frame or fixed frame on air. For all the hours that we have been produced with you, with Zero Density. So yeah, it's very reliable, and so it's important for TV channels when you have to cover all of these all of these hours of live show. By example, one customer asked me during this summer, during Euro 2020, asked me to get a backup solution, but we were not able to provide the backup solution. And so, yeah, we say, oh, okay, we will see. Yeah, of course, something may always happen, but yeah, we were not lucky. It was running, yeah, like always. So no need for backup. But I won't recommend it. But
let's not jinx it here.
but
But so far, so good. So
in,
far, so good.
just in case, yes, you can go.
Yes. Well, let's move on from studios to the field. And by the way, if you have questions, you can write them right now and I can take them in between our discussions as well. So don't hesitate. Well, let's move on from the field section. This part is also very interesting because teleportation is kind of a trend in the last year because people had to stay put because of the pandemic, and teleportation became a hit application for the TV channels, and a lot of clients used it, as well as other users, other channels. But let's talk about yours because you are one of the first adopters of this technology.
Yes, exactly. So regarding teleportation, in 2018, RTBF requested to produce a teleportation that has been made once by M6 during Euro 2016. And so the idea was interesting. And so that's the reason why RTBF asked us to provide them the solution. And so just what we did was, of course, to bring this experience to a new level. And so it was, I would say, quite simple. So if we see here, it was for RTBF. So we brought Eden Hazard or Thibaut Courtois inside the studio. So, and it was quite, it was a success. We did some buzz with this, and so it was, not so difficult to do, but depending of the quality level of your green key, which is in a remote location, of course you will get probably best results. So best attention to the details, you will get the best result on there. This is for Telefoot. After, so TF1 asked us to do some teleportation on their weekly show. So here it was made with, what's the big difference is now that we are able to bring the teleported, let's say, guy behind a real element. In this case, you see, this is a real desk with chairs, and so the trainer of Nantes, which is I think it's 500 kilometers from the studio, then gives the illusion to be sitting at the same table. Notice also that what you are watching, so the stadium, it's more or less the same environment that the one of the World Cup in 2018. And so take a look also of the tifo, so the use of a virtual crowd inside the virtual stadium in order to display messages, logo, names, colors, what you want. We have different level of control of the crowd, of the virtual fans which are in the stadium, sitting in the stadium behind. So it was the second level of teleportation. So you have seen the one of RTBF, which were sitting in front of the presenter. Now it was the second level. And after we went a little bit higher till, so we can show now the third video from Fernand Mendy. And here it was, it was a little bit more, it was a joke, of course, but what you are going to see is the guy with is teleported here near the presenter, is there, but now his arm gives the impression to be placed on the real desk. And so in order for you to know, we were not there. So now the customer is producing all of these things alone. So we did the integration, of course, of the stadium. We went to do the setup, to do and to provide training to people from the TV channel, so from TF1. But now they are able to do it by themselves. So it's really great because they've got by themselves that idea to put the arm of Mendy on the real desk in order to add more realism to the integration. And I saw also in some cases that they were putting a cup of coffee or something like this on the table. And so it was just some elements in order to add more realism to the scene. And if you remember what we did for France TV elections in 2017, the idea was always to bring a real elements inside the virtual scene. Or as we have seen for TF1 World Cup, by example, with Denis Brognard inside the locker room, he was touching a jersey, but the idea was to come back from the locker room with a jersey. So and to give it to one of the guests, by example. So it's always like this when you add some elements that can be either virtual or real, you can play with it, and it adds more realism to the scene.
So let's talk about the logistics, because when people see it like this, they expect a very complicated process in the background. But with Reality Keyer and the Reality Engine's ability to render post-production level quality in real time gives you a lot of flexibility in this front. So tell us how it's done.
Yes, so first, of course, in the remote location, I don't like to say remote because there is nothing which is remote in this case. So you have only for this case, of course, a green backdrop, a small one. You don't need big things. Perhaps you noticed on the first video we saw in Russia how it was made. So here you have just a green backdrop, and of course, let's say a green cube where you can put the arm, and of course the green cube may to be at same height, the same, but the real one, of course, it's the basics. But it's on here you see, but it's quite some let's say it is not very so complicated, and so this feed from the camera is broadcasted to the main location, I would say, and at that time we are using a 2D plane with the Reality Keyer, and we know, I hope that everybody knows about the power of the Reality Keyer. And so what the most difficult parts which have to be managed are the delay of the sound, of course, and because the players need to get one earphone in order to hear the question, of course, of the presenter. It's like a duplex. It's not more. But you have to manage all of these things, and you need to get 3 years ago, width, the bandwidth needed to be important, of course. in order to get the best quality image in the system. Now, I would recommend to do it in 4K and to stream it. And now, since, of course, 3 years, a lot of new solutions have been developed and brought to the market. And also since COVID time, everybody now did distant meetings like we are doing now. So we did a lot of experiments inside Zoom or inside Teams and different tools like this. The quality is not so good in order to do teleportation using this kind of transmission solution, and also you cannot control the delay of the sound. You cannot control as well the communication path with the people which are on the distant location. So actually,
these platforms are limited in that sense.
Yes.
But as a broadcaster, you shouldn't worry about these things.
Exactly. But I'm sure that with 5G, we will get more and more flexibility regarding this. So it will become more popular. I remember that for elections in Thailand, for Spring News, they asked us to use teleportation with politician guys, which were in different regions, of course, of Thailand, and they were able to get them inside the studio, on the studio set. And so everybody now is using teleportation. Even now, if you are looking and watching, I saw some interviews in the US with Obama, with different things, using the same thing. The future of teleportation, if I can talk a little bit about this, will depend. My dream is to get a 3D, so the player or the people inside the green screen, or we know that we won't need a green screen in the future. We know it, but to get a 3D model, a real-time 3D model of course of the player of the person you want to teleport. It will be, yes, I think in order to achieve the best level of quality, because at that time we will be able to rotate the camera, to move the camera, because here you have to you don't have to go after, let's say, 25-30 degrees maximum. You can rotate the camera behind, let's say, around the scene, but not more. When we will get 3D models, real-time 3D models of the people you want to teleport, of course, it will be really the thing that everybody is waiting for, of course.
I just want to give a few details on this image, actually, because people might wonder, how is the key going to look like? Just there's like curtain behind it. For those, of course, who are not in about Realty Keyer. Realty Keyer is not a chroma keyer. It's an image-based keyer that works real-time on the GPU. So it takes the picture of the green screen and it can key for every pixel there is. So it doesn't work with only one color of the green, but it works for every shade there is on the clean plate. So it works best even in non-uniform backdrops. So the key quality, even with the curtain behind, should be pretty good, as we saw in RTBF's case. So, okay, let's move on to the 11th sports, because reporting from the field with AR, this project actually shortlisted for an award. And in the meantime, before moving on, Thibaut, this is actually a good glitch. I want to ask an incoming question about teleportation before we move on. Could you use a robotic camera on the teleportation end and send complete tracking to the robotic camera from the main studio? So we're talking about 2 robotic cameras.
For sure.
For sure. Okay. The
Yeah,
answer
for sure. Yeah.
is crystal clear.
We have one of our partners in France did it. XD Motion with a robotic arm. Transfer also the camera movement of a robotic arm. Send all the data to a remote location, and the robotic arm was following, of course, the main one, the master. Let's say yes. And so the answer is yes.
Okay, thank you for the question and also the answer. So we got the right video.
Yeah, so here it's examples of what Eleven asked us to provide end of the season. So and wanted to create a new ways of doing reports and showing statistics. Showing statistics at pitch level, it adds some dynamic when you compare to, of course, what you can do to studio. And I'm sure that the future is going that way. As I told you before, of course, green screen are great because you get good results, but people always want to get some real elements. Here you see there is a real desk, but normally you don't need it. You don't need this real desk, but it's just to do, let's say, the situation more comfortable for the presenter. And so we produced some games end of the year with 2 different, you know that in Belgium we are speaking 2 different languages, French and Flemish. And so we produced at the same time 2 different languages, 2 different broadcast augmented reality, one for the Flemish channel and one for 11 French speaking and one for 11 Flemish speaking channel. Here it was with the cup, of course, that was won at the end of the season by Bruges. So it's a new way of doing things. And what is important to understand is why sometimes you know that your presenter journalist will be in the stadium in order, of course, to comment the game. And you have also a team which is will be sitting in the studio. Of course, it means 2 technical teams, 2 installation, 2 setups. So I think that the kind of use we did end of last season could also be used as a new way of thinking, presenting games, talking before the game at halftime or after the game, and getting, yes, because you are quite close from the players, from trainers, and so from all the people which are in the stadium. So I think there is still more and more to invent and to create. But here the idea was just to produce some dynamic presentation of statistics or analysis or about, let's say, about the presentation of the 2 teams before the game. So it was really nice, and so that's the reason why we have been shortlisted to broadcast awards in the category of creative uses of AR. So
yes, the category really tells about itself, because when I first saw it, I thought why it's not widely used. Because yes, the studio type AR is very common now for sports broadcast, but from the stadium it's not heavily at all. Maybe I haven't seen it much, but correct me if I'm wrong, but it's definitely creative use.
You know that it can be of course, it's more complicated than an already studio which is already set up with VR and AR. You know, of course, you arrive in the stadium, you need to place the crane, because here in this case we came with a crane, a small crane. So you have to set up the crane, to put the tracking, to do the tracking calibration, and so yes.
So how many cameras were there? How many engines? How many operators?
Here it was, as we did the choice to use one crane per channel. With one crane, with a small crane, you can create enough dynamic movement in order in order for us that with only one camera it should be enough. Because as you are always moving the camera, you know, it's always providing dynamic, the dynamism of the shot. So you don't need, perhaps I would recommend to use a second camera, like a PTZ camera, a small one from Panasonic, by example, the UE150 that we are using quite often. It's easy to install, easy to set up. And so you can at that time get a wider shot and a closer shot. But I think that with this, it's enough. And here we have projects for some customers with two PTZ and one crane. And with this, you can create, let's say, big environments and really great presentation, instead of using a specific virtual studio with a specific crew. So you can, I think, produce also, so you can save money, I think.
Okay, let me take another question on this part. So what do you do during the game? Do you produce keying graphics on the grass? I think you not, but I'll just ask. You don't key the grasses during the game, right? It's just AR.
Here it's just AR, but we are keying, of course, for virtual advertising.
We'll come to that in a minute. Okay. This is just AR, so no keying required on that part. But let's move on to our third and final topic. So this is interesting, and I really enjoy this. This is leveraging stadiums, and it started off with virtual fans because no one could go to the games. It was boring to watch a game without the fans' excitement, basically. But then people came back to the stadiums, but still there are many opportunities to use in that area. And let's talk about them. Yeah.
Yes. So here what we are going to show is how we can adapt stadiums or events environments, how we can enhance the stadiums in order, of course, to bring more dynamic presentation, or more graphic, or more branding. You can use AR to brand your stadiums and to change the branding. So of course, using AR to brand the stadium is great, but what is greater is that you can change it. So you can change it depending of the events, or depending, of course, of the region where you want to broadcast it, or whatever you want. So so if we are looking at this video, so during COVID time, at that time, no people were attending, of course, inside the stadium. And so, by example, here what we did is we had some virtual screen. This is a virtual screen with a replays of the game, but also you can play with big giant pictures of the players. You can add LED boarding. You can add, of course, the virtual fans. You can control it. You have seen it inside the TF1 environment. you see how you can create branding effects or colored effects, or you can celebrate victories, by example. And here it's what is important to understand is perhaps Birim, you can show it, is you have a virtual carpet.
I'm drawing with
it's a
great skill.
So it's a Beoban carpet that you see on the just near the goal and the goal line, and everything which is upper side. So the second LED boarding, when you see a Betway or the virtual banners from the second level with Solico, Relay, VTM2, Luminous, these are virtual banners. But all the other things are yes, and all of the things are real. So the customer at that time asked us to add some spaces, virtual spaces, in order to get more visibility for some other partners. So you can run the video. And so even at the beginning, it was not the intention to use the system for virtual advertising, but we noticed that since the first use, the idea was to try to add more visibility for partners. So everything, so you see here the croquis upside is virtual. At pitch level, of course, it's real. And the second range of banners is virtual as well. So there is a mix of the two. And of course, at that time, it was also a good way to hide the empty stands. Okay, so you have two reasons of using AR in this case. It's of course to empty, to fill some spaces, some parts of the stadiums which can be empty, or with less spectators or audience or fans, and add some different things.
Also, you can change the advertisement per channel, per audience. Like it depends on how the client wants to utilize this area.
Exactly. So here we add some LED boarding. So the second level of LED boarding is virtual. Of course, in the real stands, you see that there is a crowd, and on top of the crowd, there was some messages displayed on banners. Of course, here it's only a couple of ideas. You can use it for lineups or for branding or whatever you need. So you are going to see some experience. Here it was for celebration. Here, by example, we add a second floor. We add, so the upper level is a virtual one. Yes, exactly. And so in this case, adding a virtual stand may help you to get, let's say, a bigger or a more beautiful stadium, but also you can fill it with virtual advertising. So here it was the case to add, and you see also a sky dancer, which is a dancing near the screen. And here you can find the virtual crowd. This is a virtual crowd inside the real stadium, the real stadium.
You wouldn't need this for World Cup or Europa League, but this would be great for smaller leagues.
Exactly.
So you always have smaller areas and smaller crowds. They can utilize this.
Exactly. Here in this case, I will come later about the crowd. You see, this is our these are virtual fans, okay? And you have a real stand which is lower at pitch level, and you have a virtual stand here, the virtual second floor, which is filled by a virtual crowd, is a virtual one. You have a virtual screen as well on the left of the screen. You've got also logo and scores on the pitch. Yeah, so these are different uses of the technology, and you can of course display different things on the crowd, and just like you have seen during TF1 experience. So,
talk about the tracking, Thibaut? We had a question.
So here it's quite simple. We are using here a Stipe tracking system. This is great with a tiger which is walking, or the car on the pitch. Of course, these are things where you can think to add more dynamic. So for federations, for club, for each event organizer, he can sell. Let's say he can sell. He can win more money with that kind of animation of the advertisement. And so you were talking about tracking. So here we are using Stipe tracking that we are setting on main camera, and we are using also PTZ camera.
Wow.
And so we are providing, so each camera has its own render engine, and all the augmented reality feeds are delivered to the main Obi van, where the director may mix, of course, these sources with augmented reality. So it's quite transparent for the director, for the TV director. Here it was interesting. Thing we are going to talk about a little bit later. Here another other project. It was here in Charleroi, and so here we put everything. So it's not the best case, but it was what the customer wanted us to do. So putting a lot of things, and even zebras. And zebra are the mascot of that team, so it was the reason. But I will explain you some ideas about this a little bit later. So here you see a different tool range of LED boardings with animated advertisements, which are covering the fixed panels which are existing in the stadium. So yeah, it can multiply, of course, the visibility of your partners, of the sports club partners, if for football, but it can be for everything, of course, and also for federations and all of these things, with virtual banners, virtual LED boarding, so everything you can add. And as you can see, the tracking is really great. And we are working a lot on the tracking, but also in the process in order to get that results. We are working a lot on this. Of course, now we have created our own process, our own workflow, in order to achieve that quality of tracking and integration of virtual elements inside a real environment. And of course, some of you will be noticing the accuracy of the solution, and also regarding the length between the camera and so the distance between the camera and the place, the location where where the LED boarding, the virtual LED boarding are placed, are located. So it's really a great job when you see that quality of solution. So yes.
Let me ask a follow-up question on the tracking. When you're using Stipe, is it optical or mechanical tracking? If optical, well, please go ahead.
Mechanical tracking.
Because you can't place any stickers anywhere in this case.
Yeah, mechanical tracking. Yes, and of course the lens of the camera is calibrated by Stipe.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, of course it. Actually, I didn't use other tracking solutions because you know when something is working, you don't have to.
You don't change it.
To change it, so I'm not taking any risk. But probably, of course, it's we should be able to use any type of tracking, of course. But
This should.
Because Stipe here, we have Stipes in studio, we have different things, but yeah, it's also reliable, and yeah, it's only my opinion, of course. But we know that if we have to guarantee the result, of course, we will recommend what we know and how we and devices, but we know how it works, and yeah, so probably, of course, you can.
Your own workflow, so it's normal that you recommend your own workflow, but any tracking should do it probably.
Of course. And we have really great solutions with PTZ as well. So yeah.
For PTZ, which one you use?
Mainly the Panasonic, but now we have a Sony, a new Sony here inside the studio. So we are going to use it for inside our weather studio. So it works also. So
for certain Sony PTZs and Panasonic, Reality Engine has already a node for tracking, so you don't have to do anything. It comes pre-calibrated, and you just pick the node, pick the PTZ you want to use, and it's automatically go. So it's one advantage in that.
Of course. After I will say that depending of the lighting conditions for sports, for example, of course, PTZ camera are not have not 3 CCD, and so of course the quality may differ a little bit. But for augmented reality, I would say it's okay. We have been using PTZ during a long time, even for night conditions or whatever, or poor light conditions. So yeah, sometimes you can get some differences, but from all the customers, actually, it's very difficult to see if it's PTZ or not. So quality is getting higher and higher, and so.
Yes, it's the
so
way.
It was about advertising and some stadium enhancement. So perhaps we can go to what we did for tennis.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. We always showcased soccer, and we had occasional bicycle here and there, but there are other sports. So let's talk about tennis.
Yeah. So here for tennis, it's a tennis tournament here in Belgium, and so you see to the left the clean feed of the camera, and to the right you see that we created a complete environment with stands, with virtual advertisement, with banners, with a screen, with different things. And also, as we were there to generate more visibility for partners and to create a more beautiful court, we also decided to add some AR. During the game. Here it was, of course, a virtual advertisement on the net.
I was going to ask that, is it real or virtual?
No, it's a virtual one.
Okay.
It's a virtual one. And of course, as we were there, we used also the system to do some scoring effects, or yes, to provide some information regarding scoring or regarding the name of the players, and also adding some screen will help the TV director to show replays, or to get more dynamic inside inside the images of the court, of course. So yeah, so this is an example, but it's just to give to the audience the other ideas about using the technology, of course.
This application definitely should move forward than the pandemic era, because
of course, yes.
It gives a lot to the audience, I think, and of course to the federation, to the organizer, to the TV channel. Set extension, expanding your spaces is one of the things going virtual offers you, and people should take advantage of it, I think.
Exactly. So now I've got a lot of requests to do that kind of things, because yeah, you can transform.
Yes.
Yeah, you can transform. Here you see it. You can transform quite easily a place to another one, and so it's great for yeah, for some visual effects or for advertising. This is what we call stadium enhancement, of course. Yes.
Great.
And I think you are going to show another one.
The Belgian Training Center.
Yes.
Yeah.
So here it's really interesting. We are in the Belgian Training Center here in a small country, in a small town in Belgium. This is where, so we transform, this is of course, the real stadium, so only for training, and we transform it with a virtual stadium, but a complete virtual stadium. So it can be useful for. It was, of course, a kind of technology and skills demo for this, with 3D players, with augmented reality, with all of the things that we are able to bring to customers. And here, what I was talking before, it's about controlling 3D players on the real pitch, because this is only AR and not more virtual studio. Of course, I would like to get real players on the field, but it was forbidden by Roberto Martinez, which is the Belgian trainer of the Belgian national team. And so we cannot get pictures of real players inside the virtual stadium, but we know we can do it.
This is for kind of a personal use, I think. This isn't on air, right?
So the idea with this is just like for tennis, you know, when you are considering more confidential sports or lower categories of football or rugby or basketball or cricket or what you want not always, you won't always find big stadiums. You will probably, like in this case, find locations like this with nothing around it, or let's say sometimes something you don't want to show. And so you are not, you don't have always to put a complete virtual stadium around it, but only adding some stand or some different buildings or different things. Then you can multiply, of course, the visibility of the partners. This is, I think, in 10 days, we have a new sports for which we are going to produce virtual advertisement. And in this sport, which is a more confidential one, we are going to add elements around the pitch. And at that time, it will offer more visibility to partners, but also it will give more credibility also, and more, perhaps more spectacular rendering options than before. So you have to consider this demo like a way of enhancing your events. And when you will be broadcasting on your YouTube channel, of course, you can then add the partners you want, the people which are supporting you or your club or federation. And so it's, I think, the way of using at the best that kind of experience.
Yes, well put. So let's move on to the esports case.
Yes.
Which is also very different.
So I would say probably we can talk about the fan experience or animals.
Yeah.
Yeah. So here in the fan experience, of course, we have already seen some video, but it's always interesting to try to understand more. When we are talking about fan experience, in my opinion, in my head, is you see that each guy is a virtual one. And first, you have control. You can control the color of the jerseys, of the shirts of each guy inside the stands, inside the stadium. And also, these guys have a small panel that they can put on top of their head. And this panel, you can also control the color of it. And so we, like here, you see the panel, the small panels, and all of these panels, we can display logos, colors, messages, video, everything you want. And in this case, what is interesting is that for us, it's a new location. It's a new way of displaying messages. Before, we had only a screen to show messages, to show content. Now we have, just like if we provide virtual video mapping, it's a video mapping area. Exactly, it's a virtual one, of course. So when you are in the stadium, you cannot see it. But probably that we are going now to link the augmented reality scene with smartphones to get 5G experience, in order for people to get some experience for fans. But when I'm talking of fan experience, is okay. Here, by example, you are a small clubs. Your stands are not always empty, are not always full. I would say some parts of it remains empty. Why not use these empty spaces to fill it with supporters, with virtual supporters, with virtual fans? And perhaps when we are talking, you see here the action of controlling the virtual crowd inside the stands while displaying the logo of the club or different things. You can imagine that you can create virtual fan zones. It's an idea, but why not? So if you want to get, let's say, more people or offering some experience to your clubs of supporters, you can imagine to put virtual fan zones and allowing some of your supporters through your application to control maybe an avatar of people. And if I would say, Biremi, if you don't have the time to go to the stadium, perhaps you will send your avatar there. Or perhaps you don't like it, so perhaps you are going to,
well, we are getting into the metaverse here.
To offer a virtual ticket for somebody to be part of the game, but watching at home and controlling your avatar from home. And so at that time, club of supporters may interact with the virtual fan zones, sending messages, sending emotions, emoji, sending, you can imagine numbers and numbers of new fan experiences that you will be able to create in order to perhaps to get the new audiences, because you know that the clubs, TV broadcasters for sure, federations are always willing to renew their audience, because you are not now people are going to watch the games in stadium, and it's an experience. But when you have to watch it on TV, it's not always a big Champions League game. So sometimes it's a little bit boring. So I think that for some sports, they will have to renew the experience in order to get a younger audience, because now you know that young adults or kids will won't
lose interest very quickly.
Are losing interest in the game. Yes, of course. So they want to live experience, but not really watch all the games. So I'm sure that I didn't yet invent all the fun experience, but it's just to give ideas to people and after to call me, hey Thibaut, you talked about this, perhaps we would like to try this and to start new experiences. And so I'm sure that we are going to see new experiences in the near future, for this. And so it's about fun experience, and about fun experience when we are talking about young audience, looking about younger audiences. Probably that the next video will be interesting for some of them, if we are talking about animals.
The esports one, you're saying?
Yes, esports, yes. So here, what we are doing, and thanks to the chairman of this football club, the mascot of the club is the zebra. And so for this game, he told me, yes, Thibaut, if you want, do something, and we want to do the bus here in Belgium. And so, and you have to know that some people came to the stadium to see the virtual zebra. But sometimes it's... and so here, of course, it can be like this one. It can seem incredible for us, but these are the codes which are used for esports or e-games, and what we do is to import and to merge the esports codes into conventional arena
Why not?
where conventional sports are used to. Here it's inside the same stadium, and we showed a little animation about a battle between the two mascots of the clubs that you can reuse in different cases. So this is really interesting. It's only one experience we did, but I'm sure that probably that from my point of view, okay, I would say, okay, it's it's not really interesting, but from the point of view of younger audiences, probably it makes sense. Well, you remember that when with League of Legends, the dragon was flying over the bird's nest in Beijing. It was a surprise, but for people who are looking at esports, it was great to get their, let's say, a mascot of a game of League of Legends flying over the bird's nest. So,
well, in this case, when you have, for example, 200,000 people in the stadium, you have millions watching online. So
yes,
it's also for them too.
Yeah, but here it's only to try to bring ideas to here to the webinar, because I'm sure that we are going to get requests. If I'm talking a little bit about Star TV, actually during IPL, so it's a cricket professional pro league in India, all the clubs, all the teams have their own, let's say, fantastic representation, you know, and so they are playing with this all the time because they have understood that if they want, and for cricket, it's mainly the goal, because you know that cricket is a really hard game to understand, and it takes a long time, and that's the reason why they created different games starting from cricket, and or different ways of playing cricket. And of course, if you want to get new audiences, and probably the goal is more important in India. And so that's great because they created completely fantasmagoric environment to the teams by themselves. And now they are using animals, they are using fantastic creatures and representing all the teams. So I think that if it happens now in India, it will happen in the future in our countries. And India is always a little bit in advance, you know, in the way of using technology. So
well, Star Sports is very innovative. Unfortunately, they're also very confidential, so we can't share any videos right now, but I will ask them to provide a short clip to add to the recording of this webinar, maybe they will provide. I'll ask. But okay, let's circle back to advertisement in the stadiums, and you have the side banners, but there is a problem in that section, and you solved that problem. Can you talk about this AI solution you came up with?
So normally I should not, because everybody needs to do its own experience. But so the problematic of augmented reality is that the ball disappeared. So you are going to see it. You see it now. Oh, it's virtual now. So
it's gone.
So the ball disappeared. So it's of course a big issue. You can solve it with different solutions. You can like they did in Spain. You can please pause. I want to pause it. I want to explain. Perhaps you want. I want to come a little a little bit before, yeah, with the Eden Ball. And can you play it again, the Eden Ball? So just be the video before that one.
The previous video.
Previous video, sorry. Yes. So here, a way like they did in Spain is that they put real color banners on the seats of the stadium, on the stands, and so at that time you were able to do a key, okay, a key to always keep the ball. But in our case, it was not possible to do this. So we start to discuss with some companies which are developing AI, and so we developed with them a way to solve that problem. So here you see that the AI is detecting all the players and the ball. And so the idea is, okay, if the AI is able to provide in real time a mask, we can use that mask to as a new layer on top of augmented reality, you know. So at that time, the ball won't disappear anymore. So you can run the video. Okay, so you see, and the AI is always also saying there is the level of confidence, of trusting, if it's really a ball or it can be something else. And so this is the result with the mask. So the masks are generated in real time. And so using this are blue mask, and using the blue mask to create a new layer on top. These are the masks. And so at that time, we can add this layer to the augmented reality. And at that time, of course, we will be able to put virtual objects, virtual assets behind the players. The players, or in the most common way, behind every moving elements. But here in this case is players, because the AI has been developed in order to, let's say, to detect elements which are moving like players.
Okay.
And so at that time, of course, we will be able either to replace with real content, by example, on the LED boarding at pitch level, or to add a virtual one, or to replace real content by virtual content. So there is quite a lot of new applications to invent and to create, but for virtual advertising, it can be really useful.
Let me thank you, Thibaut, for being our first guest of this very busy month full of events. So do you have any final remarks you want to share? What about your recommendations for TV channels who haven't opted for Virtual Studio or any AR technology yet? What would you say to them?
I would say that as we are working since quite a long time now, I would say that the trends, you know that now XR studios are coming using LED walls. We are part of one project like this in Belgium. I think that for TV channels, I think that the future will be hybrid. Now, everybody now is able to do augmented reality, and especially with, let's say, the low, it's not a bad word, but low-cost equipment. When you see now the quality that is delivered by PTZ, it's not, of course, the price of broadcast camera, so doing 4K, but PTZs are always also now
They're giving an affordable solution to budget
solutions.
channels, definitely.
Yes, and so so regarding this, I'm sure that I saw now there is augmented reality everywhere. And so I would say that what we did 3 years ago is now up to date. It's a mix between LED walls, green boxes, and XR extension, and augmented reality, of course, to provide content, to do the link with data from statistics or different things you want. I'm sure that we will be more interacting with the virtual elements, for sure. We were talking about virtual fans or crowds or whatever, but for sure people will be able to send messages to the content that they are watching it. Yes, so, and of course, and advertising is a really big market. So after, I think that all of these people from the club federation, TV channels, companies who are buying rights, also everybody will find some ways of getting money from this, and money for someone can it can add value to content for everyone. So yeah, so I think that everybody will, now it's the time where everybody will move to virtual technologies. Can be AR, VR, whatever. So since the time I'm working in it, I never felt so close of getting new customers, new ideas, new experiences. So I think we are at the right time, at the right place.
Great. It's the way forward, and there's definitely a great environment right now to push real-time graphics forward in Virtual Studio in AR, XR, and we're gonna see a lot of new things, I think, in the upcoming years.
For sure, for sure.
And of course, choose the right technology, future-proof technology, and work with a team that has enough experience to deliver. And well, that's why we have Dreamwall as a guest today.
Exactly.
So thank you for joining us, Thibaut. It was lovely to host you.